A very good evening to you, and thank you very much for joining us for this edition of Spectrum. We are live on Radio 1 FM 90, which is broadcasting from the heart of our city here in Kampala in the central building. Radio 1 is also live on its website, which is www.radio1fm90. While on that website, look for an icon with the word Listen Live. That is on Radio 1, www.radio1fm90.com. There's also another option of listening to this radio station, and that is through the different radio listening apps that can be obtained from the Google Store of your smartphone. Look for any of those radio listening apps, download, look for Radio 1 FM 90, and as long as you have an internet connection, you'll be able to listen to us from anywhere across the globe. We can also come right in your sitting room or where you watch your TV from. That is, if you have a DSTV connection, look for audio channel 897, and if you're on StarTimes, look for audio channel 97. Our topic of discussion today will be looking at succession and transition in the NRM. Now, there has been an intense but quiet discussion going on within the NRM organization, that's how they prefer calling themselves, about succession and transition as different groups joshua it out ahead of the party processes leading to the 2026 general elections. Now, at the moment, there are two main sides in this discussion. They include those that want the current party chairman and president to run again as flag bearer in 2026 in fulfillment of a resolution taken by the Central Executive Committee of the party that is famously known as the Kyobe Resolution. That group has a slogan, Muzei Tova Kumein. Now, others think that his son, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, should take over from him, hence the talk of succession and transition. This group, with the slogan Standby Generator, has launched a political pressure group known as the Patriotic League of Ugandans to foster their ambitions. Now, political analysts and some opposition leaders think that this debate is diversionary and aimed at hoodwinking members of the public. But a section of the youth from within the party, the NRM organization, have also joined this debate. President Yoweri Museveni has summoned the Central Executive Committee of the party to, among other things, discuss the roadmap of the party ahead of the 2026 elections. But there are people who actually think that this succession and transition matter must be discussed and resolved to avoid scattering the party supporters. So tonight, we'll be looking at the dynamics in the NRM, especially hearing the voices of the youth who have become part of this discussion. I have two guests in studio today. Mr. Jacob Yayaru, chairman of the National Youth Council. He is the leader of a new group that is calling itself Yellow Youth Movement, which emerged last week and issued a press statement about this ongoing discussion about succession and transition. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here again, Kenneth, and to all the listeners. Good evening.
Mr. Godwin Toko, lawyer, human rights and governance activist, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thank you, Kenneth, for having me. I also work with Agora.
You also work with Agora. Agora, you are the people who are famous for exhibitions that are going on. Today, what are you handling?
It's the Parliament exhibition, but that's a topic that can take us 2 hours.
That's a topic that can take us 2 hours.
Too much on it, yeah. But yes, it's a parliamentary exhibition happening right now on X.
What are you trying to show?
Just to ask questions of accountability and governance of Parliament. So people are bringing in some of the information and saying, talking about things like the recent recruitments in Parliament, questions of that kind. So anything basically that has to do with Parliament.
When are you likely to do an exhibition about political parties?
Well, it will depend on the demand. We don't lead these things. People normally approach and say, can we have this? And then for us, depending on the credibility of what they've asked that we do, we can go ahead and do it. All right.
Now, let me begin with you as an outsider. You're not a member of the NRM. You follow political activities outside that particular area and other political parties. What do you think is going on? We hear about succession and transition within the NRM. This discussion going on, there are some people who actually think this is red herring, nothing serious is going to come out of this. There is no any form of internal political competition or fight for power, fight for leadership in the NRM party. What do you think is going on?
So I think it's not surprising, given that we've had one leader for the last 4 decades. So it gets to the evening of what people begin to assume that it's the evening of his leadership. And so this clamoring starts. People begin forming different groups, looking for alternatives, trying to reach out to them to say, can we work with you, but to see how best you can live and then things still stay stable. That's basically, I think, what's happening in Uganda right now. So you have within the NRM system itself, the NRM has been a party that is known for working outside formal structures. That has been President Museveni's way of governance. So if you can point at almost any ministry or serious institution in this country, and there will be a state house desk for that, whether it's lands, whether it's education, or these things, or health. The health monitoring unit, I think, in the state house. So people of his party have picked the leaf in that regard. So his son, who not long ago had very, very can I call them unfair words? I don't know if that's the word for the ruling NRM party of his father, calling it the most reactionary group in Marxist terms, something of that in that line, if I remember the tweet right. So has also formed his own group now. You have it's called the Patriotic League of Uganda. Someone poisoned my mind by putting the word Pilau somewhere, so it always comes back to my mind. So you have that group that is pushing and thinking that, well, we are the young people. These old guys who went to the bush. The president is, I think, about 80 now. He's been in power for 40 years. Maybe it's time now to transition and move on to us, the next generation. Not surprising that, of course, because NRM has revolved so much around the individual of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, there are those who cannot imagine life without him, and so even them, they're trying to push back and say, no, this guy, this gentleman should still be around longer. I don't know when they will see the sign and say, okay, now we can think of someone else. Yeah, so for me, that's basically what you're saying. Concerning the opposition, so people like Honorable Norbert Mao, I think even them, they go to a point. See, Honorable Norbert Mao has been in the opposition, I think, almost his entire life, right, from university and all that. So he has been the other side for so long. And then you get to a point where you're in your 50s, 60s, and then you're looking and seeing that it seems the only thing that is not about to change is the fact that NRM is here. And even if it changed, probably there would still be someone from the NRM taking over. So I'm not surprised that people like him, the Uganda People's Congress, have reached out and they have those agreements with NRM that ostensibly, also we are told, have things to do with the transition.
All right, let's go to Mr. Eyaro. You are in thick of things as a party member. What do you think is going on? Should we take seriously any of the things that are happening? Even before you tell us what your group, the Yellow Youth Movement, seeks to achieve.
First of all, I think those who mistake the Patriotic League of Uganda for joking are making a big mistake. I think they are very serious, a group, and their intentions are very clear. I think their intentions have been the single most mobilization strategy they have been employing. It has not been whether they love President Museveni or whether they are NRM. The strategy in the Patriotic League of Uganda is clear. We want General Muhoozi Kainerugaba to become president of Uganda. Now, the question for them is of when. There is a group that is very powerful that says it must be 2026. There's another group which says, no, we must wait until President Museveni is done, then we proceed. Now, a bloodless transition. He cannot, as president, oversee a peaceful handover of power. And it was the single political strategy for some groups. When General Muhoozi became a discussion of the possible succession, then that discussion changed. They realized, actually, there is no way succession from President Museveni to General Muhoozi can happen in a bloody way. It cannot happen by a coup. It will happen peacefully. So they have now said, no, President Museveni is overseeing a monarchy. And that monarchy is transferring from himself to his son. That's coming from the opposition. And yet there is no indication anywhere that President Museveni intends to hand over the presidency by unconstitutional means, which would then qualify it to be a monarchy. So in all these conversations...
I think by monarchy, they are simply saying that from father to son.
I don't think...
That happens in a monarchy.
I don't think that a monarchy has elections to choose who becomes the next president.
And the election wouldn't count? I don't think you're going to say that Uganda's elections are free and fair, people can vote and can decide. In the circumstances of Uganda, I think you have to put that into mind. There can be a monarch through an election.
I think, Toko, you need to ask the FDC if we have free and fair elections. They thought that elections are rigged until NUP came around, and they are now, if you ask me, not even in the backbench. Many of them are now opting to leave Parliament and leave the FDC as a whole.
FDC
but
got the same number
we are
of
digressing,
MPs it had before.
Toko, we are digressing.
I think what Toko is saying, that an election process in Uganda is simply a strategy to cement the hold on to power.
Exactly.
By President Yoweri Museveni. And therefore, it can still happen for General Muhoozi.
But if 30% out of 100,
colleagues,
doesn't mean that there's no rigging.
Colleagues,
let's hear.
Fine, there is rigging in Uganda by many elements. I don't think that President Museveni in State House sits in State House and rigs election.
He does.
No, I think rigging of election happens at the polling station, where President Museveni appears in the morning to cast his vote and leave.
No, that's wrong.
I think that
I'll come to you.
I think if you want to ask where there is rigging, for me who has participated in elections, I can show you very many ways in which rigging has happened in Central here, in Northern, and not this rigging is not a preserve of one political side. All political sides in Uganda participate in political malpractices that have to be checked. That one we have no qualms about.
All right, let's go back
to the discussion of the
succession and transition.
So there has been this idea that all the youth of Uganda have one mindset towards succession. In 2021, even though the NRM won the youth elections by over 95% of all youth elective positions, which, by the way, are by lining up. So you cannot say that NRM rigged them in a village.
Let's not go back to that issue.
I'm just showing the authenticity of the mass nature of the party. So if we are saying that NRM has that large a number, 95% of the youth structure, the next group are the independents. Opposition has less than 1%. If NRM has that much, are we saying that all NRM youth want transition immediately, and particularly to one individual? I think that has been the question next. Because there has been this portrayal that all the youth of Uganda are now saying we want transition, and all of them are saying that transition is to General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. I think that we needed to actually ask all of the youth, and I think this is the job that I've been doing as national chairman. What do we want? Are we talking about transition to a particular individual only? Affects the young people, and who best can provide it in the immediate. That is how we formed the Yellow Youth Movement. The Yellow Youth Movement, now to define it very clearly, is an initiative to mobilize young people in Uganda to join the NRM party and respect and support the NRM flag bearers at all levels to achieve the plan of mass mobilization on issues that affect the masses at the grassroots. So I hope this is solved. We are not against anyone. We are pro-NRM and the mass issues of the NRM. So if the representation of mass issues is defined in Uganda, you will find that it is President Museveni that defined them. Number one, there is mass education and compulsory mass free education. Number two, there is mass empowerment of Uganda's citizenry. That should bring capacity at the grassroots for economic empowerment. If we talk about the third issue, we're talking about mass health access. And number four, which is now the discussion, is mass skilling. If you read our press release, we are very clear about the 4 decades of the president's rule and what has been achieved in each decade, and why we strategically think now, in this time, towards 2026, the mobilization around that election should focus on 4 mass issues, and they should champion the individual that understands them best. That is what we are saying.
Right. So now we've heard from Jacob there explaining what they actually stand for. Here we are. We have a group of young people who actually think President Yoweri Museveni, who would likely be beyond 80 in 2026, should continue to be the leader in a country where you people have actually been saying that the majority of the people are youth. Therefore, there's need to have that transition to a more younger person who is probably more aggressive, more skilled to actually lead this country going forward?
So one, I am not particularly the type that wants a very, very young leader for the sake of it. Africa has not been short of those young leaders. I don't know if you know of a gentleman called Valentine Spencer. I think he was a president at about 26, 27. Yeah, it ended up very badly for him. That should have been either Sierra Leone or Liberia. Those two countries always confuse me. So we've had that. Mobutu became, no, not Mobutu. Joseph Kabila became president, I think, about 29. I don't think he changed Congo, the DRC that much. So for me, it's not just about the age. If you talk about President Museveni, I think you look at him for the record that he has had. I don't know why the Jacobs left out the issue of unemployment. Ipsos, Afrobarometer, all those have showed that the most pressing issue for the young Ugandans happens to be that issue of unemployment, mass unemployment. Some figures put as high as 70%. Yeah, if you want to prove it, practically just go and stand at Entebbe Airport and see how many people go to slave in Saudi Arabia, wash dishes. Some of our best brains after university wash dishes, clean people's dogs because they can't find jobs in this country. For me, that should have been number one. But all said and done, you've had the same president for the last 40 years. I saw how the Jacobs broke down the four decades of President Museveni. And see, the irony is this, that why there are no drugs in health centers is because the NRM uses money to fund people like Jacob and his initiative because it feels like it is easier for it to sustain power by going to my village in Marachia, buying young people alcohol, and they dance, wear yellow, and put banana fibers on themselves and spread caterpillars to whoever is around. Now for me, that is the problem. Yeah, if you really want to address the issue of education in this country, that 15,000 is allocated per child in UPE per year. You understand? And it didn't start yesterday. This has been the case. But at the same time, you have a president who spends 3 billion shillings per day. People are running the parliamentary exhibition, and there is evidence now that the Speaker of Parliament has up to 2.88 billion shillings for donation annually. Yeah, so because of the nature of the politics that we have built, yeah, that it is easier to reach out to youths like Jacob, who are educated. Jacob is a very brilliant person. I knew him back from Makerere, but he knows that we disagree fundamentally on so many issues. That you can use him, give him money. He gets some guys who are a bit educated. The circle continues up to the least youth in the village, who are then hoodwinked, manipulated with alcohol and whatever, yeah? And then those people start mobilizing for the NRM, shouting and voting for the party, and then they say, the NRM has won elections. Jacob also talked about NRM winning youth structure elections. That is accepted. That is expected. That is seen because the NRM won't allow anyone else mobilize. If Nup youth called for a party meeting today, there will be police beating them. If Jacobs and this group want to go and launch the YYM initiative, or the PLOU group want to launch their initiative. None of those is interfered with. So when these people win, and Jacob made a mistake of saying that elections are rigged on the polling day. No, elections can be rigged even 5 years before the election. If you have a president who is appointing the electoral commission, who are members of his party, members who were in the last election and lost, those are people who are going to rig elections. So unless we are being dishonest with ourselves, we need to be honest and speak these things the way they are. For me, what I see is that the NRM has always operated in a way that there is mudslinging, there are antagonistic sides. Yeah. So what I read of Jacob's group is that that is the epitome of this. That there are groups within the NRM, very big shots, fighting themselves. Yeah. And the Jacobs will find themselves in the middle. Yeah. It's a proxy war. And proxy wars tend to be the worst. There's a gentleman who wrote a book about the DRC last year called Jason Sten. He couldn't find an appropriate title for the book. He named it the war that doesn't say its name. So one of the reasons Eastern Congo has been in war for long is because it's a proxy war. People pay each other people pay rebel groups to go and fight. So
on their behalf.
That's what I see with this.
And let's hear from Jacob here, since he's also in studio. Jacob, whose war are you fighting? According to your friend here, you're actually maybe in this for money.
Well, he has not just
yet
said
another
for money.
He has also backstabbing of the taxpayer.
We are the ones in the middle of a proxy. Well, that's interesting. I want to be very categorical. There are interests at every political level. Everyone is in politics for interests to drive their agenda. And we are not going to accept the labeling of our interests. Nobody is going to define for us what our interests are. We are speaking them clearly. I want to be very clear. If you come to the political table without interests, it will be clear as you go on that you don't have interests, you're just available for usage. Toko has said here that the mass unemployment of young Ugandans is a big issue. And I have told you that in our 4-point program, we're talking about grassroots empowerment, we're talking about mass skilling of all youth. This is the most important part of what we are saying. So if we are saying that we are about these issues in the next election, you cannot say we have no interest because we are saying who is going to be the president for those issues. If someone is telling me that in the next election we should simply campaign for who we support without saying what we support them for, then I can agree with Toko that we are simply for President Museveni. But we are insisting that we are President Museveni capable. He has demonstrated on these issues. The track record is over 4 decades, and we want him in 2026 to complete these matters.
Let's focus on one particular issue that both of you have brought at the fore, and it's very critical for the young people. That's the issue of unemployment. Because Jacob here wants President Yoweri Museveni to continue because he thinks that Museveni is the one who is capable in addressing some of these challenges that are affecting the youth, including
I think his
unemployment.
programs have demonstrated that they can change the trajectory.
Or they can change the trajectory. And you, Toko, you think probably he is not the one who can actually do that, given the fact that he has been around for quite some time. Let's solve this. Jacob, you've been at the helm of the National Youth Council. You've moved it across this country. You've seen the poverty. You've seen the unemployment among the youth.
Yes.
And the programs that government has put across. But I want to put it to you that unemployment has remained a problem every other time we go for an election.
Yes.
And therefore, probably, President Yoweri Museveni does not have a good track record in addressing unemployment.
No. Maybe the realities cannot allow them to be addressed at the rate we want. I'll give you the realities.
Well, somebody has been in power for 38 years.
Yes, but he has not been the one giving birth to the many Ugandans. The problem...
He has actually been supportive.
Let me finish.
He has supported a big population.
Very true.
Saying it's good for markets.
Very true.
Therefore, he is also partly responsible for the population we have.
All right.
Yes.
So we could say in terms of giving immunization and people growing.
Encouragement.
Fine. Let me be very clear.
Yeah.
Number one, if you're going to develop a nation, you should not calculate 2-3 years. It doesn't happen. Solve major issues like unemployment in 2-3 years. You have to first look at our population structure. In Uganda's case, our population is entirely young. So it means that even if we had investment here multiplying 3 times, we would still have unemployment rates at that level if we are thinking about wage employment. Why? Because there are not enough jobs you can create for people who are coming into the job sector every year. So what is the solution? The solution is non-wage employment. In other words, you are heading into entrepreneurship that is market-driven. How are the economies that are having low unemployment operating? You will notice that for all the economies that have had a surge in lowering unemployment levels, their trajectory has been one simple one. Increase production at the grassroots and increase cottage production while you also access new and bigger markets. So you open opportunities along the value chain and at the grassroots level that are not wage-based employment. Let everyone have something to earn. That is not where do I work, but what do I do? How you achieve that is by mass levels of skilling. That's why the level of China, even when they have a population of over 1 billion now, because of the skilling level, the entire global factory is in China. Everyone is putting there, whether it's Apple, the big companies, they bring themselves. Why? Because the level of skill is enough. So we are saying, if the level of skilling of young Ugandans is enough, then that will attract the investment needed to be able to spark the money economy and also bring up the grassroots. But where there is no skilling, there is a high dropout rate because of poverty or whatever attendant factors. You are growing a population that is unskilled and therefore will never be employable. So the solution there is to say, let's start grassroots empowerment programs that are able to say, what are you doing and able to do with what you have? That is what the parish development model ideally does. If you want to see that strategy works, go to 1970s under President Park, Park Chung-hee in South Korea, and look at the Samao Lundong movement. There was a grassroots movement of economic policy. To this day, South Korea is what it is because of that.
Can I say something at that point?
I'm going to bring you in. I want first to conclude with Eyaro. So you've laid it down, and this has been the story. each time we go for campaigns, President Yoweri Museveni will talk about skilling, you'll talk about youth, you have tried to bring youth empowerment. You as the National Youth Council, I've heard you actually talking about agriculture, and things are not changing.
Well, I want to first say we are not the only players.
Maybe if you are in a privileged
let me
position,
give you, yes.
do you have any statistics that you can share in terms of job creation? How many jobs have been so far created?
No, I think the National Planning Authority has been showing that. Over the NDP3 period, we performed dismally as a whole country. Our performance was not more than 20% of the plan. And so you cannot point out one sector and say you are the reason or the other. No, everyone didn't perform well. Why didn't we perform well? Because we are not giving ourselves the detail of the nitty-gritty on the ground. If you're putting up a program, how is it running? The National Youth Council that I had has been doing a study on the government programs on youth. I have moved on that program with support of my friends, some partners. But that program is going to culminate into a report that we're releasing at the last week of March to talk about why government programs that are well-intentioned are failing, giving reasons that are not known to many of you. For example, a program that depends on a revolving fund requires that the fund revolves. If there is no mechanism for making a fund revolve, that program will die a natural death because there is nobody that performs the role that bank servicemen that do the bargaining and being able to follow up all these people do. So we need to be able to agree on the nitty-gritty. I think that's where the problem is. It's still a bit of a structural issue. But in terms of whether the programs are well-intended and they can achieve the goal, I think the numbers speak for themselves.
All right, Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Let's go for a break. When we return, we'll give ample time to Mr. Toko to also respond to some of the issues that ARO has put across. This is Spectrum, our topic of discussion, succession and transition in the NRM. Mr. ARO comes from a group that thinks President Yoweri Museveni needs to continue to lead this country and therefore should be the flag bearer against a tide of another movement within that party that is pushing for a more younger leader. Stay tuned, Radio 1 FM 90. We continue after this break.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90. Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us on Spectrum, live on Radio 1 FM 90. My name is Kenneth Lukwagandason, your host. You can be part of this discussion by sharing with us your view on Spectrum using the WhatsApp line, which is 0703-090-090. Our topic of discussion is succession and transition in the NRM. What exactly is going on? Is there any power struggle within that political party? We can see young people now pulling to the sides, trying to actually voice their concerns and also win over those that are in the other side. My guest today, Mr. Jacob Eyaru, Chairman of the National Youth Council. He's leader of a new NRM-linked group that is calling itself Yellow Youth Movement, which is also coming on the heels of another group which was formed by the General Muhoozi Kainerugaba linked group, that is the Patriotic League of Ugandans. Also in studio, Mr. Godwin Toko is a lawyer, human rights and governance activist. He comes also from a group known as the Agora Discourse. These are the people behind exhibitions that are going on Twitter and going on X Spaces, trying to portray the challenges of corruption that we have in this country. Let's bring in Toko now. We heard from ARO, especially on this issue of job creation. One of the key issues that should determine how the youth in this country should actually be voting, if there is anything to say about an issue-based political decision.
So, yes, unemployment surely remains a big issue in our country, and I don't think the NRM has the wherewithal, has the interest, or the technical know-how of how to address that problem, especially under the current leadership of President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Because I, for one, believe that this unemployment and all these issues don't just fall from the space. Jacob mentioned Park Chung-hee. Park Chung-hee happens to be a leader I've read quite a bit about, and I like. He transformed South Korea in a period of about 18 years. Now, for me, what I learned from reading Park Chung-hee and studying his life is that if you're going to transform a country, you really have to be serious. So what he did basically was to ensure that South Korea benefited so much from industrialization. the policy, the kind of policies Uganda has right now can never lead to that. So some of those policies now would meet very serious challenges with World Bank and IMF. For instance, there was a policy that you would, I think about 70% of all lending by private commercial banks, I'll emphasize that, was done for industrialization. That if you go to a bank and you're getting a loan, a bank, Stanbic, Senare must prove that 70% of all their lending goes to industrialization. Such policies, such discipline, that there was a point when he realized that they were losing so much of foreign capital, the dollar especially, and they passed a policy whereby consumption of any luxurious goods was banned in the country, in the whole of South Korea. Young kids in nursery, kids of 3, 5, were taught the differences between South Korean-made products and products that were imported, so that they could snitch on their father. So imagine a kid goes to the police and says, I saw my father smoking this cigarette that is imported. And the father gets arrested. Now, for me, that is the level of seriousness that transformed South Korea. Now, juxtapose that with what you see in Uganda. You have leaders here who can't keep road discipline. Yeah, that they wake up very late and they want to be in wherever they are going, whether it is to meet a side chick or whatever it is, and they are bullying off everybody on the road. You have ministers, people here, very, very powerful people, who can't keep the discipline of paying taxes. When they fall out with the government, then you realize that, they have not been paying their taxes because government brings out their tax bill and it shows the negatives. Now, when we have such a country, for me, the leadership crisis in Uganda only comes here to give us jobs. So what's the end result of this? Hundreds of factories in Hamave that employ youthful Ugandans, in quotes, because they give these people how much? 5,000, 3,000 shillings a day? Yeah? And because these people are very desperate, they have to go there. The border industry in Uganda, as they call it, I read recently, is the highest employer in this country because it has millions of youths across the country. But is that how you transform a country? No. We need to get very, very serious and say, where are the problems? Jacob has talked of skilling. I've told you. We educate people. I have been driven before by a border man. I picked at the Makerere main gate, and because I sometimes have to talk to these guys to create a conversation, this gentleman told me he graduated from Makerere School of Agriculture. He was paid for by the government of this country. The government paid his education dues. He couldn't find a job, and he said, for riding a border. Hundreds of people leave Mubs, leave Chambogo, leave Makerere, Arua University, Muni University, and they go to wash plates in Saudi Arabia. That is not the problem of skills. They have the skills. They have been educated. Otherwise, then we need to change the entire education system. So we are going to teach these ladies how to dress hair, how to run small business, and they are going to take those skills to the lowest levels in Saudi Arabia, where they can use them and get more money. Because here the problems are beyond the skills. So until we get to the point of addressing the real challenge, let me tell you something. I have a friend who works at the Ministry of Trade. He told me what Uganda attracts are gangster investors. Because people will come here, they'll first see and realize that, this is a country that is run like this. How is it run? You can get your way around any citizen. You can do whatever you want. So you end up with the chaff, the worst of the investors rejected elsewhere. Those are not going to help us grow as a country. We cannot sacrifice so much in the name of investors. If someone is going to come here, we need to put in place structures and say, if you're coming to Uganda, first of all, you must have a figure. Can we say $10 million that you can prove to the Uganda Investment Authority that you have? Then maybe at that point we can have a discussion. So what has happened?
Surprisingly, that's what the investment code actually says.
Yeah, let me just finish this. So what happens is Jacob starts his business in Chikubo selling plastic cups. A Chinese investor who gets loans in China at 5% comes and is selling plastic cups next to Jacob, who got a loan from Centennial at 23-25%. How are the two going to compete? You get? So for me, the problems of unemployment start from there. That the Ugandans are now driven out. So because they're driven out of these businesses, they end up falling in the hands of the foreign investors who now set the pace. And because they don't have so much to lose, they're not employing any people to whom they have any affiliation. They can start paying you at 3,000, 5,000 shillings a day. So then RM will say, we have opened up all these factories. Sometimes they say, opening 5 factories in a day. And I'm like, that's marvelous. But at the end of the day, what are these factories doing? They're employing Ugandans who are earning 5,000 shillings a day. Finally, let me just finish this. Jacob is the chairperson of the National Youth Council. There are some issues that I expected him to have addressed right now that because of the politics that we play in this country, the petty politics that always picks up around. So I'm not surprised that it's picking up now as we head towards the election. You have someone like Olivia Lotaya, a youthful person in Jacob's constituency. I think every one of the 30 people who was arrested with that is a youthful person. But Jacob will not advocate for their release. Yeah, his interests it will not be mentioned anywhere that you've seen Jacob going, for instance, to visit them. I have visited Olivia Lotaya because to me, I feel like that is a young person, a young Ugandan. If it can happen to her, probably happen to me next. So until we address those issues that are underlying the issues of the challenges of the youth and the problems in this country, all these pressure groups and all these things, well, another waste of time.
Jacob, could the problem be lack of space for the youth to actually participate in these processes? For instance, if we had maybe internal democracy within the NRM, we would have somebody like Jacob vying for the party ticket. You have brilliant ideas, like you put them on the table here.
Thank you.
And probably those ideas are not being implemented. Is it a problem of youth not having enough space, or even the lack of internal democracy in the political parties to allow other people to emerge?
So I don't know what internal democracy is.
Internal democracy, I mean people being able to actually come forward and compete without any hindrance.
And I think the NRM has that.
The last man who tried to run against President Museveni ended up in Butavika. I don't know if you remember that gentleman from the army, Jacob. Let me
conclude.
Declare your interest that you're going to run for the NRM flag for the presidency, and you'll end up in jail if not dead.
No, I think political institutions don't work like that. It's not about declaring interest. Let me help. I think the late Jacob Olanya, Right Honorable, defined it best. Political parties exist to achieve political power and maintain it. Their ideas should be maintained. A political party must first understand, how do we achieve power? If the achievement of political power by a political party is that so-and-so will bring that power, then everyone in the political party must rally around that individual. That is why in the National Unity Platform, you will not discuss who will be flag bearer. It will be Bobby Wine. There's a time when...
We haven't reached that point.
No, I'm just helping.
I'm just helping. No prep here. So.
Oh, no, but...
Even if we don't have no prep here...
But the National Unity...
We have not yet reached that process.
The National Unity Platform did not call for people to come and compete.
So
no, they just appointed who will be taking the flag bearership. That is why you will not tell FDC of 2011 who is the best candidate for party flag bearer, because it was very clear. And when they tried to...
FDC actually voted.
Let's allow him first.
I'm coming to that.
I'll give you an opportunity.
FDC will vote. When they tried to have internal democracy, it broke down the party every time they tried it. That shows you that political maneuver and power must be hinged around a single leader for the time they are leading. And that idea is what propels political activity to be organized. In Tanzania, the chairman of the party is always the president of the party and of the country. That is for the CCM.
But in CCM, the leaders have been changing.
And I agree.
Count them. In the 40 years of President Yoweri Museveni, how many leaders has Tanzania had?
In terms of what? The presidency? I think you can count many more. But Mwalimu Nyerere was the one who decided that it is time for me to leave when the people still wanted him. And that's what we are saying.
So we should
the best player.
We should equate President Museveni to Julius Nyerere.
Well, he's a student of Julius Nyerere, as many of us are intending always to be. So the idea is that the one who leads the party to where it is has the biggest say on where the party should go, because he knows the structural arrangements and maneuvers he has done to make sure that we exist as we are. None of us among the NRM membership know the cost it has taken to hold all these parts and pieces together like President Museveni does. And that's why we're saying, as the Yellow Youth Movement, he's the chairman of the party. We support him. If President Museveni tomorrow tells us that we are no longer having him as the flag bearer of the NRM 2026, we are supporting so and so. We are going to support him because it is his ideas that have kept the NRM and this country in relative stability all these years.
All right, Toko, what do you think about that ideology?
So I think, one, Jacob is overstating the importance of...
He is the party and the party is him.
Jacob is overstating the importance of political parties in this country. If President Museveni left NRM today and said, I've joined NUP, he would win the next election if he has all the powers that he has.
I
right
think
now.
you need to ask the ANT.
Wait, the ANT was
people who
different.
crossed.
The people crossed from ANT never had the power President Museveni has. That's why I've insisted from the start of this conversation that we don't even need, we don't understand the essence of political parties. Let me give you guys a challenge. Go and pick the manifestos of ANT, the one of NOP, the one of NRM, the one of FDC, the one of UPC, and read what they present as their manifestos. All of them will be talking about the very, very same things: water, some bit of electricity, healthcare, blah. So in our system, you see, I used to agree with President Museveni. I agree with President Museveni's writing when he wrote Sowing the Mustard Seed, the first edition. He said societies like ours have not evolved to that level where people where people are stratified in different classes so that they can understand the essence of different political systems and political parties. So because of that, Jacob is clearly overstating the importance of NRM to President Museveni's being. So if he left NRM today and said, I've joined NUP Katonga will win the next election. Because the person of President Museveni moves with so much, moves with the entire state. He'll move with the army, he'll move with the police, the electoral commission, and all these things pay allegiance to him as an individual, not the party. And President Museveni understands this so much that you will have the NRM party sitting at Chadondo Road. You'll have some shadowy organization somewhere in Chambogo that says Tova Kumain, yeah? At the end of the day, all these pay allegiance to him. So that's how he has been able to keep power. But just a word of advice, I think, to the NRM, if they take advice, is that Uganda has only been led, if I'm to use that clear word, by two political parties. That's the Uganda People's Congress and the NRM, yeah? Because the DP has never been in power, and these other parties have never been in power. So they need to learn from what happened to the last party that had power and stuck with one leader for far too long. That party is almost non-existent now. It's a footnote in the parliament of Uganda. I think about 19 members of parliament, something like that. But it's really insignificant to the point that it has now made an alliance.
Which party is that?
Uganda People's Congress. It has made an alliance with the NRM, and it is that insignificant. If you look across the border to the east, there was Kenya African National Union of Kenyatta, and then later of Daniel Arap Moi, a very, very powerful party. Yeah, that everyone almost worshipped that party in Kenya. I think now they have how many members of parliament in Kenya? I forget, but I think it's a single-digit figure of members of parliament that they have. So because of that too much attachment, you see, when your party revolves around one individual, we are human beings. We have a lifespan. There's a time when you either go down in terms of popularity, a time when you go down in time, or a time when you die. Yeah, so I think the surest way for the NRM people to kill their party is to stick so much to one individual. He has mentioned the example of CCM. CCM was tested. Yeah, it is the independence political party. UBC had the chance to be CCM. NRM has never had the chance to be CCM because Tanzanians, like South Africans with ANC, they associate that party with a party that stopped colonialism, something that. So what has the NRM stopped? It's like there's nothing that you can really say that I stand with NRM on these ideologies because he has done this. Everything you'll mention as a success of the NRM. When you mention roads, I'll show you the roads in Kampala and show you that they're very terrible. When you mention UPE, I'll remind you that the president spends 3 billion shillings a day and kids in UPE get 15,000 shillings to take them for a year. So all these things. So the NRM needs to think beyond the individual because for a gangster party, that's what the NRM is. Like the NRM to survive, it needs to outlive an individual and then maybe can evolve going forward.
Well, we have comments coming in from listeners. We have somebody who writes in from Kumi who says, I know a technical school in Kumi, government at that, which runs 6 technical courses, but has only workshops for 2 to 4 months. It says it has workshops for 2 to 4 years. Which miracle will they do in terms of scaling? He's talking about the issue of scaling the youth at the grassroots level. We have another comment coming in from Rico. Says, Jacob, honestly, why did you go to school? Because you are continuing to sing for one person who has been in leadership for more than 40 years. So when will you ever work for your family? Because Museveni said that he is working for his children. That is Rico, who is listening in from Eastern Uganda. Then somebody else writes and said, tell Eyaru to tell the PLU leader to be patriotic and democratic, to be patriotic and democratic, to allow him lead the new pressure group. I think leaders can come from anywhere, not necessarily from a specific group. Why don't you go and lead PLU? That's what this listener is.
They would make a good leader, I think.
Drakumani from Arua says that tell the NRM boy in studio that they don't have much to show. They're just confusing the youth and the general public. Succession from NRM to PLOU, new wine in the old bottle, meaning the situation of Uganda after Mzee will be worse than it's now. Corruption will be at its peak. For Uganda to move out of this, we need serious conversation about our future. Uganda has long laws that blinks. That's his comment there. Samuel Yiga Racing from Namlondo Zone says, Mr. Kenneth, thank you for the show. Sincerely speaking, Mr. Jacob is disappointing. In other words, they are looking for ways of getting money from the current regime through fabricating other parallel groups to that of NRM. But Ugandans are not fools. They are watching everything. Then somebody else writes in and says, that is Kasozi Mulindo, says, is it not true that border borders are the highest employer in Uganda, as your guests would so want to presume? Agriculture still holds the first place as highest employer, given its widely spread value chain. That's a comment from Kasozi Mulindwa. And let's begin with the responses from Jacob Eyeru. And I wanted to ask you, Jacob, why is it that it's not the NRM Youth League that is speaking, but another outfit, to the extent that people think now you're looking for money?
Please repeat the question.
Why is it that it's not the NRM Youth League that is speaking, but you, another outfit, to the extent that some people think you're looking for money?
First and foremost, I'm a member of the NRM Youth League, as is every young person who is a youth and is in the NRM party. You could say, why is it not the NRM Youth Leadership or League Leadership? I want to be very clear. It is not the duty of only the NRM Youth League leadership to mobilize for the party. As young people in the NRM, because we realize that there is need to mobilize, we were able to come up with the idea. And many people have been saying Eyeru is fighting the NRM Youth League. First and foremost, I'm chairperson of the National Youth Council because of the NRM. I am the flag bearer. So I cannot sit idly by when there is an election coming and there are youth in Uganda who must join NRM and be able to proceed to vote the NRM candidate. I cannot sit idly by. But more important, this initiative we did in consultation with the chairperson of the NRM Youth League. So for those of you that are wondering why is it us and not him, well, the chairman of the NRM Youth League blessed it and said it is a good initiative. So what was there to stop us? The unfortunate part is that the current leadership of the NRM Youth League was elected in 2016. 10 years later to 2026, their majority of them, about over 90%, are not youth. For us, we are still here, defined by youth, defined as youth by many standards. But I need to say this very importantly. The NRM is launching a strategy, an endeavor now to register Ugandans into the NRM party. In that case, who are the people to be registered for membership? Number one are people who are not on the register. Who are those most likely to be? Those are new voters who have just made 18 or are 17 now, will be eligible by next year, and around those who have been making 18 over the last 3-4 years. All those are young people. So the next election having over 1.8 million, close to 2 million new voters, means NRM needs to mobilize that constituency to register and join the NRM party. If I am a national youth leader, national youth chairman on the NRM ticket, and I cannot see that that is a necessity for a mobilization campaign for young people to join the NRM Youth League, then I have failed my party. I am only a fortune hunter down in the streets of the National Youth Council.
Toko, as we come to the end of this show.
So there's a gentleman who corrected me. Thank you very much. I should have said, what I meant to say is that most people who are employed in agriculture do it as peasants. Yeah, not really for the economic bit of it. They just do it for feeding themselves. So in that sense, you distinguish border from the agricultural sector, and border will take the higher figure. I want to give Jacob some advice. I think if you really want to mobilize for the NRM in the next election, try something outrageous. Try something no one has done before. You've done whatever you're doing has been done, yeah, and done many times. So meet President Museveni and tell him that, you know what, there's a young lady called Olivia Lotaya who is in jail. She has been there for the last 3 years. Yeah, just imagine 3 years of your life. That's a bachelor's degree. The period the average Ugandan takes to do a bachelor's degree. This lady, a mother of 2, has been behind bars. Tell the president that free that girl. If it's a constitutional country, like I saw their program saying that President Museveni restored constitutionalism, you can't have someone on remand for 3 years. 1,000, I think it's now 1,022 days. yeah, that this group of people have been behind bars, tried in the court martial. Those are the things making the NRM lose support. Yeah, for me, I'm a very apolitical person. Today, I'm a Rastafari. Rastas don't belong to any political party by our being. So me, I'm a Rasta. I wouldn't belong to any of the political party. But these are the things I see when
I need to ask you a genuine question.
Please.
Do you really think that President Museveni is the one who grants bail?
No.
I think let's be very clear. Noop did not get 5 votes or 100 votes. No.
Well, President Yoweri Museveni does not grant bail, but we have seen him at least writing.
No, I want to be very clear on this issue.
And directing on how a case should be handled in judiciary.
Noop got over 3 million votes. Okay?
Mm.
The number of people who have gone to jail since then are not more than 100 or 150. Okay, let's put them at any number. You cannot say that of all the people, the reason why this particular lady is inside is because she's Noop. That's not possible.
So, Jacob,
no.
Jacob, wait, I'm not going to let you go with that. Jacob,
I want to finish
there was only one Benedicto Chiwanuka killed in the 70s. Yeah? There are figures that show Amin didn't kill 1 million Ugandans. There were about 8 million Ugandans in the 70s, and the highest figure, I think it is the one by the ICJ, International Committee of the Jurists, which has been disputed, says Amin killed between 100,000 500,000 people. That gulf between those numbers. If you kill my sister, even if it is one, for me, that is bad enough. It is enough for me to take a very negative decision and say, I'm not going to vote President Museveni because they killed they intercepted my sister. Yeah. So for me, that is an answer. I want to begin to say, the numbers, 1,100.
I agree with you. I don't agree with the whole frame.
Gentlemen, we have to come to the end of this show.
Because they're not the only supporters.
I want to thank you very much. I want to thank you very much for making time to actually come here and have a
discussion.
Can we have another
show tomorrow?
We will have another discussion on these issues going forward. I've been your host, Kenneth Lukwago Anderson. Up next, we have the news in English with Miss Josephine Dagano. Thereafter, we'll have the Soul Train with BP Junior.
Spectrum on Radio 1